Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, my name is Melanie Labusch, and I'm going to present to you today our research about the capitalization of German nouns and their impact on semantic processing. So in most Latin-based languages, common nouns and also verbs and adjectives are written in all lowercase letters. So only proper names are capitalized. So the English verb, the English noun book, for example, is written in all lowercase letters, and also the English verb to go is also written in all lowercase letters. But in German, however, not only proper names, but also all common nouns are written with an initial capital letter. So the German noun Buch, which is book, is written with an initial capital letter instead of all lowercase letters. And as a verb, gehen, which means to go in German, would be written in all lowercase letters. But why do the Germans do this? So does the initial capitalization of the common nouns have any benefit? Or does it maybe help to process the word better in a semantic way? Or is it just a historical legacy? From the theoretical perspective, in current neural and computational models on word recognition, letter case does not play an important role. So it is said that visual input is mapped onto case invariant abstract letter units, and then it's further processed. But these models mainly focus on the English orthography. Evidence for these models has been found in mass priming experiments where target words were processed equally fast, irrespective of the letter case of the prime words. And this was also supported by ERP evidence. However, it has been found out that case-specific information is not always lost. So in a lexical decision task, where people had to identify a letter string as a word with brand names, people could detect brand names that were written in the most familiar letter case format faster than a less familiar case format. And in another combined lexical decision and fMRI task that was done in German, common nouns in their most familiar case format, that is in German with an initial uppercase letter, were identified faster and more accurate than when they were written in all lowercase letters. For non-nouns, it was the same, but the other way around. Further, in the same study, the visual word form area has been identified as a brain region that is sensitive to the familiarity of letter cases, in the sense that it is more active for unfamiliar letter case formats than for familiar letter case formats. However, we still don't know what happens at the semantic level. So the problem with the lexical decision task is that in order to decide whether a string of letters is a German word or not, it's not completely mandatory to access any semantic information about that word. So therefore, the measured effects from previous experiments could have occurred because the presented words appeared more visually familiar to the participants than others. For example, the brand name IKEA in all uppercase letters looks much more familiar to us than the brand name IKEA in all lowercase letters. In order to avoid this problem, it's possible to use a semantic categorization task, which is asking, does this word belong to a given semantic category? When answering this question, people need to access their semantic knowledge in order to give an answer. And therefore, they need full lexical access to the word. So this is basically what we did in our first experiment. We presented the people with individual words and asked them the question, does this word refer to an animal? And they had to answer yes or no. As stimuli, we used 100 animal nouns, 100 common nouns, and 100 verbs and adjectives. Half of the words were written with initial uppercase letter, and half of the words were written in all lowercase letters. For the data analysis, we used Bayesian linear mixed effects models. And we found, first of all, that there was a very high accuracy for all responses. For the animal nouns, we found that animal nouns with an initial uppercase letter, which is the typical way of writing in German, were processed faster than animal nouns with all lowercase letters. Verbs and adjectives were processed faster when written in all lowercase letters than initial uppercase letters, which is also the most common way of writing. For common nouns, they were processed faster when written in all lowercase letters than with an initial uppercase letter, which is surprising because this is actually not how common nouns are written in German. So this can be due to several reasons. First of all, there was an unequal distribution of yes and no answers in our experiment, because in a third of the cases, people had to answer yes, and in 2/3 of the cases, they had to answer no. So this might have biased the participants towards a no answer. Then we used lowercase common nouns, and this is actually an orthographically illegal form of writing nouns in German. So therefore, this form of writing could have biased the participants to respond with no rather than with yes. So in order to investigate this more closely, we did a second experiment. In the second experiment, the setup was basically the same, except that we only presented animal nouns and common nouns to have an equal distribution of yes and no answers. And instead of the orthographically illegal all lowercase format, we used an all uppercase format that is actually sometimes used in the German language. What we found was, first of all, also we found a high accuracy for all responses. For the animal nouns, as in the first experiment, we found that when they were written with an initial uppercase letter, it was responded to faster than when they were written in all uppercase letters. And this time also, we found that the same pattern for common nouns. So common nouns with an initial uppercase letter are responded to faster than nouns with all uppercase letters. So altogether, we've seen that previous experiments have shown that lettercase information has an influence on word identification on the basis of the most familiar perceptual form of a word. And the current experiment has shown that on top of that, lettercase information influences the speed of processing beyond visual familiarity in a semantic context. So in the theoretical context, this means that current models of visual word recognition cannot entirely be applied to the German language. This is because these models assume that lettercase information gets lost early in processing, and the current experiments have shown that in German, lettercase information have indeed an important influence in lexical semantic processing. So therefore, it's possible that orthographic processing may be language specific. Future studies will investigate whether the processing of lettercase information in German will have an impact on the speed of sentence processing. It may also be influenced by reading skills, so developing readers and those speakers who are learning German or individuals with reading-related disorders may have a different approach on processing the capitalization of German nouns. And in the future, it's also necessary to see whether there's a neural region that is sensitive to lettercase information in a semantic context. So a candidate for this would be the visual word form area that I mentioned in the beginning. Also, the time course of the processing of lettercase information of German words on the lexical semantic level and the corresponding ERP components are still unknown. So there's still a lot to discover. I hope you enjoyed my presentation of the current findings, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. It was indeed an enjoyable and clear presentation, very interesting findings. We have time for a couple of questions. Any hands? I can see Nina Zdorova has raised a hand.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Melanie, for your beautiful talk. I'm wondering, as a German second language learner, First of all, thank you very much for the outline of your perspective studies regarding the processing of capitalized letters on a sentence level, right? Because indeed, during listening to your presentation, I was thinking that I assume that reading a sentence or even a text on a text level, your results might be different. Because I remember me as a German second language learner, the first rule you learn about German, all the nouns are written as capital letter, right? Yeah. And it facilitates basically your processing and your parsing of a text, because when you just have a look at the text, you immediately create expectations, what you have there, what we, for example, do not have in English, where all the words are written with small letter, and sometimes we have those homophones where do not know whether it's a effect or to effect, a processing or like to process or a process, right? When we cannot distinguish between a verb and a noun, and which is not possible in German. German gives us immediately this information. So thank you very much for the outline of the future research. But I'm wondering whether you think it's possible at all to answer this question, whether capital letters indeed facilitate our processing or not, if in any way for both, for monolinguals, for native speakers of German, and for second language learners of German, this noun written with a small letter is already unusual information. And I think it will immediately impede the understanding, because we expect having nouns in capitalized. Do you think it's possible at all to answer this question?
You mean based on the information that it's unusual that nouns, like for native speakers, for example, that nouns written in all lowercase letters.
Exactly.
Unusual. Yes, the thing is, I think for people that are learning German and that are used, for example, to the English orthography, maybe for them it's less unusual that they see a noun written in all lowercase letters, and they still have to learn these rules according to the German orthography. So I think there's a lot of potential to see when people are learning these rules and whether these rules are really effective in learning German, and
okay.
on which
I see, but
they are effective.
I see. Thank you very much. And my recommendation would be that to diversify your second language learners based on the level of English or German, because I think the advanced German learners will immediately be stuck with this problem as native speakers, because this is unusual information. It shouldn't be written with lowercase. It should be capitalized.
Yes, totally. And that's also what you usually learn when you're learning German. What you're learning in the German classes, I assume.
Exactly.
Yes. What is interesting is when you're learning this information in the process while you're learning German, and when you detect it as unusual in the end, right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. There is time for one brief question, if anyone else wants to ask. If not, I will ask whether you think this can be addressed, the question of facilitation through capitalization can be assessed cross-linguistically, for instance, using other languages where sometimes, like English, sometimes nouns are capitalized in certain cases, sometimes are not. Comparing the speed of reading, and also within the language, can you compare generally the speed of reading in German versus other closely related languages? Other Germanic languages, for instance, do people read faster in German than other similar languages? Take Danish, for example, or Dutch or English.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You mean like compare the reading speed of German in comparison to the reading speed of Dutch or English, and
yeah, as long as the word length is matched, for instance.
Yes. I don't know if that was already investigated. I know that this issue of capitalization has been investigated in other languages as well. In Italian, for example, it has been done with proper names because in German is the only Latin-based language that has this property where common nouns are capitalized, and in other languages usually proper names are capitalized. So it has been investigated with proper names, and they have found similar effects, but only for the visual familiarity issue. So
okay. Well, here is an idea for an online study while we're stuck in this lockdown. Just do it cross-linguistically.
Yes, thank you.
Very interesting.
Very interesting
Very
idea.
interesting. But we do have to continue. Thank you.